Okay, I'm going to talk about a new topic. Right now, from now on, the topic will be a little bit non-traditional operating system. But in any case, that if you are interested for me to cover some topic, and it happened to be, I feel comfortable covering that. For example, if you ask me to cover something which is not really related to something I'm familiar with, I probably will spend some time to learn the new thing. But also, if you actually decide your final project, you want to actually, you can actually talk to me about the area. Maybe we can actually provide some kind of discussion in the classroom as well. Okay, so I'm actually going to talk about something which is another spin operating system. So what is operating system? Operating system is essentially saying that, well, I need to manage resources. And we typically manage network resource, memory resource, and time. And also hard disk, those kind of software, hardware resources, and time. By the way, there is a core area in operating systems really managing the time. Such as real-time scheduling, as we talked about last time. So I'm actually talking about how do I actually manage what I call relationship resources, your social network resources. So I have this project called Centric operating system kernel, which you will actually see that this was initially developed. In fact, the first version we developed was probably around 2007. At that time, the Facebook just come up. So essentially, the project is actually being designed, thinking about an online social network like Facebook. How do you actually manage that kind of resources? The thing is that this type of kernel is actually pretty much every single operating system kernel is trying to support application with some perspective. So at that time, we're actually looking at applications such as email or any kind of recommendation system or Wikipedia or even BitTorrent or search engine. We actually apply the concept of adding a social network resource pretty much to each of this. And we have probably at least one paper published in each of that area. So it's quite interesting that you think about your online resources that you can actually apply with BitTorrent. For example, BitTorrent, what we did is that, well, you're actually exchanging pieces with another unknown client. So at that time, we were actually thinking of so worried about privacy. And we're saying that, well, typically you want to exchange stuff with BitTorrent, you actually want to avoid exchanging a piece, maybe with somebody you know, or somebody you actually fairly close with. So you want to actually protect yourself because you participate in sharing some torrent at that time, at least at that time in the BitTorrent community, a huge percent, we usually say 85% are like a questionable content. All right, so that's actually something which we will consider. But today we're going to talk about using the example of email. Just want to show you what is the email as an example about why you need to manage these resources, what are the challenges we need to deal with that, and how do we actually be able to improve. Okay, so what is social informatics? So social informatics is essentially we try to extract information about our relationship. Our relationship may be, for example, Facebook relationship is actually whether you're a friend of friend, that's one type of relationship. But you can possibly extract relationship for other form. But for now, let's just assume when I say I'm actually extracting the social resources, I really means that, oh, you have some friendship with another Facebook user. There is a lot of work on social network. Most of them are either data analytics or what I will call more of a theoretical perspective, try to understand the graph theory, try to use the big data. But here we try to actually look at how do I utilize those information from a systematic perspective, a system perspective, to really support that. So the difference, what we're doing and a lot of industry is doing is that, in fact, what we're doing over here is, I would say, maybe similar to what Facebook is doing internally. And we're just basically outside. We're the user, peripheral user, we're outside. And while Facebook needs to manage our relationship to make a recommendation, to make a lot of application. And later, I want to actually show you that I still remember 2011, 2012, I wrote a paper, which I will actually talk about this. And somebody actually realized I developed that because I'm actually building my kernel as a Facebook app on top of Facebook. So Facebook actually at that time shut it down. And I actually mailed in the paper. I mailed in the paper to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And they realized they actually unblocked the application. So it was very interesting that what we're trying to do here, some of the things they already need to do. But what I do emphasize the concept is that this accessing to this the resources is actually very powerful because they enable you and me to develop a lot of interesting application. And so far with social media assistant, like Facebook, like Twitter, we're merely the user. If you want to deal with application, there is a lot of restriction about what you can do and you cannot do. You basically cannot healthily develop. I mean, there are game developers who actually try to using the Facebook API, be able to extract the information. But their API are still very limited. Mostly you use those API with something like, oh, how often you visit this site, or actually they have a way to contact you to send you some notification. Earlier, that this API can do things like this. Earlier, the things they can do is they can actually go to your profile to access everything you have, and also they can access your friend or friend. So the thing is that they're either too loose or actually too tight. So it's really hard to develop any interesting Facebook application. I mean, 10 years ago, there was a lot of application on Facebook app. Right now, I'm not sure. The market is really shrinking at that stage. Okay, so this is I'm actually trying to both convey the concept, but also point out some of the issues with the system perspective. I still believe until today that a company like Facebook, they can actually design their kernel, design their system call interface a lot better, and such that it will allow a much healthy community to actually share that information, and is more useful and more protected at the same time. Okay, so I'm actually going to motivate some of the example about why we need the things that I'm going to talk about. So this was a big problem. Still is a big problem called spam. I mean, the morning when I don't know about you guys, but when I open my inbox in the morning, there's at least hundreds of email, and we're getting better or worse, I don't know. In fact, I'm actually thinking we're getting worse in terms of how the anti-spam filter is doing for me. For example, I use a Microsoft, it's Outlook, they have a default to put my mail. They think that they're very smart. Think about this is the email I don't want. They actually put it in a different folder, which caused a lot of trouble in my real life in the past couple of years. So let me actually ask you a question. I assume all of you deal with spam. We all have to deal with spam. But I'm actually going to tell you I have two products, product A and product B. I just wonder which product you would like to have. Okay, the product A, both of them, A and B, are both anti-spam filter. The first product, it will eliminate 99.99% of the spam. But it will also eliminate about 10% of your good email. But product B, which is, it will eliminate 60% of the spam. But it will only with like a 0.00001 probability to eliminate any of the good email. You're like, so you have two products. Which product do you think you will buy? Product A or product B? Product B, right? Because losing good email, the cost is just too high. So we want to reduce that. We want to be able to have all the good email. And we as a human being, we're pretty comfortable saying that we will be able to handle spam. We just delete or whatever, you get rid of that. But this means that if you have basically until today, all the anti-spam, they have to reduce what we call false negative. Okay, that 0% false negative means that it is a spam. No, sorry, it's false positive, right? False positive, false negative. Sorry, it's a false. That 10% is false positive. Sorry about that. False positive. So false positive is saying that it is not a spam, but you treat it as a spam. That's false positive. Okay. False negative saying that it is a spam, but you actually treat it as a good email. That's false negative. So essentially what we're saying is that in the product we desire to have, the false positive has to be really low. And the trade-off that you're going to accept some false negative in your system. So this is totally different from say antivirus. If you have an antivirus product, you would definitely choose A, by the way. It's interesting, different product, you're going to choose different. If it's an antivirus, you want to make sure that 99% of the virus got eliminated, and they eliminate occasionally some of the application being treated as a virus, you probably will say okay. All right, so that's some of the interesting experience. So essentially what we need to do is for email spam, I need to deal with that problem about those kind of spam myself. In this picture, just roughly saying that I still have 40% of the spam I need to deal with. And typically, every morning when I woke up, I have to look at all the email. I probably cannot spend more than 1 or 2 seconds to actually eliminate the email. I have to decide, look at it, and then click, and then just, that's pretty much, we have to deal with that. Okay, so, but that's actually a problem. I will show you why. Okay, so just to let you know, this email at that time I got, this is from your all graduate student when you apply, and I will get an email to say, hey, we have some statistics about what's going on. And at that time, this email get classified as spam. That's pretty horrible, okay? So the thing is spam is actually really causing us a lot of trouble. And this is not just spam, but applied to a lot of other phenomena as well. Okay, so I said I actually can only spend 1 or 2 seconds to look at every email to decide whether this is spam or not. Can you help me with 1 or 2 seconds whether this is a spam, do you think? You spend more than 5 seconds already. All right, I don't have that kind of time. So I'm sorry about that. So this is essentially what I'm doing is I actually don't read line by line. I directly spot keyword, and those placed highlight with red is actually I consider trigger my, how do I say that, cognitive anti-spam filter, and then I basically reject it. Why? Because I don't know this person. He said, my name is what? I mean, this is typically, I don't know this person. This maybe from Nigeria, from certain country, which is, I have no idea. And pretty much all this email I received, by the way, at that time, I got a lot of requests saying that he want to take internship, whether you have this position. To a point, I actually treated a lot of this inquiry as a spam as well. Spam is an interesting issue. It's not a definite definition. This is spam, this is not. Spam is actually very personal. It's very relative. If you think about that, I mean, a lot of email, you and I will decide differently about spam. So I look at saying that all this email I got, they said they have some practical and technical techniques, and they said would like to get involved. And this one really triggered me as a spam. And somebody said, I'm willing to do anything. When that, I read that, I mean, this is obviously a spam, right? Okay, so I'm actually going to move my mouse, right? My mouse is somewhere here. I'm actually move my mouse over here. Somewhere there is a delete button. Yeah, there is a delete button. I need to delete it. So I was lucky that my eyes follow my mouse. And I actually see something in this particular paragraph. It's Justin Howell. In fact, that Howell is misspelling. It missed an L. There's a name being mentioned in this email. And then I realized that this is not a spam. I actually don't know Justin Howell. I no longer can remember how he looks like. Okay, so let me actually tell you the story so you know that the detail. So this email was sent to me November 27, 2007. Okay, November 27. And I was teaching ECS150, the undergraduate operating system. And actually, I looked for it. I found there's one email that's actually coming to me. The email was November 16 by Justin Howell, one of my students. And he actually wanted to sign up for the appointment November 26th. So essentially, I actually met with Justin Howell the day before. So that's why I still remember his name. And that's why the whole email with this context, then it's there. Okay, let me actually first tell you the timeline. So what happened is that Justin Howell set an appointment with me November 16. We met November 26, and November 27, I actually got this email. I treated it as a spam initially. And by the way, the student, later we became friends. I actually make friends with the person who sent the email because actually he was very interested. He lived not too far away from here. But the thing is that it was the timeline over here. So let me actually go back to this email. There are two issues I want to discuss with this email. Yeah, I have two issues to discuss. The first issue is that the relationship information in this email has been implicit, has been embedded in the text. I mean, if I use natural language processing and use whatever, I might be able to extract something. I might be able to even handle that title. So the thing is, I'm actually using natural language processing not to understand what it says, but I actually want to use some form to extract the relationship information. So I actually can leverage that information because in this email, the only thing that mattered to me is that relationship information, to be honest with you. Okay, so that leads to the second question I want all of you to think about. This is almost like a social science question. What's the difference between two emails? The email, exactly the same content, exactly. But one with relationship, one without relationship. What do you think is the difference? I mean, do you think it's even reasonable for me. If say this is somebody, the same person, Eric Schmidt, send this email to me, but he didn't actually mention that relationship with Justin Howe. And I never pay attention to that. What makes this two email different, with and without that particular sentence or mentioning about Justin Howe, assuming I take it out? What's the difference? Okay, let me just question you. Assuming I just meet with you today, and we're just some kind of business or whatever professional we met the first time, not even a close relationship. But then the second day, you got an email, two email. One of them exactly this. One of them actually mentioned me. He knows me, but the other one didn't mention that. Will you or should you treat those two emails differently? Probably yes, right? I mean, it's a very weak social relationship, but why? But the question is why is actually make a difference? There's a multiple possible explanation in this. So I want to tell you that the first kind of answer is saying that, well, this person, he actually has some relationship with me. So because I need to respect that person being mentioned, so actually I will honor this email. This is one explanation. But if you think about that, it's actually something I feel this is kind of unfair, right? Unfair to those people who doesn't have a relationship, who doesn't have a background, who doesn't have a professor happen to be UC Davis, and he will miss that chance. Okay, that's actually one kind of thing. So we have to be worried about that. So that's why I turn to my second explanation. I try to make sure myself not feel so guilty about that. Okay, so this is my how do I say that, sneaky part of this. So the second thing I'm thinking is that, okay, because we live in a world, there's so many flood of information that's coming to us. There's so much coming to us. And we have no way to tell because this information can be generated by machine. So essentially the value of our information today is essentially being diluted, or we say inflation. Essentially inflation, think about that. If you actually got a message which you know that this particular message actually will cost something, either it's a real capital or social capital. But the other message is essentially, you know, is it can be generate a huge amount for free. So essentially, when the amount of information is beyond certain bandwidth that you and I as a human being can handle, then at that time, if they actually have that relationship, make a huge difference. Because if that particular message, only a very small number of people can actually possess that information. So that's actually the key thing is it's not saying that we are misjudging the people based on relationship. It's really because of the world is being very vulnerable to flood us with lots of information and such that we actually have to take that. So therefore, the argument here is very simple. So therefore, I want to build a system that can actually dig out those kind of information as much as possible, and such that I will be able to use it in application. And this application will be able to use this information, which is not easily possessed by the attacker, and we will be able to differentiate the information that's actually truly useful for us. Okay, so that's just give you a motivation about what's going on. All right, so I basically just arguing about oh wow. I'm sorry, that one blocked again, but the recording won't. Okay, so basically we say that there is a relationship is important. And we have all kind of relationship between a human or human and computer and human, depending on what's going on. So let's actually take a look at what we did. So we actually implement a system. This is the system we call social email, and which is actually based on relationship. So let me tell you what happened. So there are two users. They're actually communicating using SMTP, is just sending an email out. But I'm actually having a social network over there, capture all the relationship that's keep in the kernel. And what happened is that when one of the user want to contact Eric Schmidt, at this case, that he want to contact me, and he realized that, okay, from that information extract from the graph down here, I actually extract the information that's actually relevant to that particular communication. So essentially, you can see that now between Felix and Eric, we now have a just-in how. Instead of implicit, now we actually make a explicit. And not only we make a explicit, but we actually also put some trust number there, because we know that this particular node, say Justin Howard, he knows maybe he is a social capital. So when I say social capital, it means that he's actually at a position that's actually can connect a lot of people. He's really good in public relationship. So we actually put in a number called trust, saying that even though there is a relationship, but that relationship has a quantity to describe how well that relationship is. So essentially, this relationship between Eric, Howard, and Felix is actually captured as a graph, but with a trust score that associated with that. And that particular amount of information is going to support that communication between Eric and Felix. So we actually send this email looks this way. Wait a minute. I actually have the other interface. We actually implement this using Thunderbird plugin. So essentially in the Thunderbird plugin, that whenever you actually try to send an email, so what is an email? It's two email addresses. You send from one email address to the other email address. And when you send to this email, this is essentially the picture we built at that time. We actually construct a social network graph. And then when you actually send an email, we have a finding between the email address and the faithful identifier. So we look at the graph and we actually find out one of the paths, which we think computationally has the highest value of trust. It's not just link, but also looking at the trust relationship. So we actually pick up the highest value in the trust value between the sender and the receiver. And we actually generate a encoding for that relationship associated with that email. So you see that tag, XDSL. XDSL is a attribute, what we call extended attribute, that you can add it to the SMTP protocol. So essentially, in all the network protocol, it has this capability to allow you to add the attribute that you define. So if this attribute is included in the email message, if the email reader from the receiver side don't understand this particular label, it will just ignore. But it actually understand this label, then it will actually respond to that. So assuming we actually did this experiment, assuming both sides, the sender and receiver, they both actually have the capability. I said we actually implement two versions. One is actually like a Gmail web interface, and the other one is Thunderbird plugin. And so if both sides are our application, then essentially that tag will be extracted by the receiver. And the receiver then will contact the kernel to say, hey, I have this tag to support this particular email. Can you tell me what is the social relationship? Then that will allow us, for the receiver using that tag, to actually go to the kernel to extract the first part of the information, and then it will actually be able to get it back. Okay, so in fact, it's interesting. We actually did this at that time, at least about all the PhD students are actually, my PhD are all using this email to communicate. And the thing is that a lot of us are using Gmail. So it means that our email with this XDSL, David Social Link, we actually let us send it to Google. And it's just, probably it's very obvious right now, but Google never bothered to touch it. So it means that it will preserve that tag still in the email all the way to the receiver. So then we'll be able to have a communication, at least among all the people are using email. We'll be able to communicate with this relationship. So at that time, I was very happy because at least with all the people that I know, I actually separate their email because in my, I actually still have the screenshot somewhere. In my Thunderbird, I actually can see, I can actually add another tag and I can actually store all the email based on the score. The default score is 0. But if there is any email with that, it will happen there. So this is actually quite interesting because in the future, when I actually met someone, or actually somebody really want to contact me, and the thing is that how do I actually prevent somebody want to contact me, but he has some relationship, is that as long as he can find one of the person that's actually be on this graph. Okay, there are 2 requirements. It's not enough for you to be actually on Facebook. You have to be in Facebook, and also you actually will be able to bind it to the email address. Then your email address will go to your Facebook ID, and then I will be able to find the path to actually do that. And obviously, did you actually hear me saying, I said, at least it was. Because right now, Facebook changed the API. You no longer can do this. I can do this was because the API was designed. I will be able to find out your friendships. I will be able to do a search to actually know that. Okay, so just to let you know, this was an experiment somewhere. We start working on this about 2006, 2007. But this one, I think we published papers somewhere around 2009, 2010 to talk about the whole approach we're doing. Okay. So any question? All right. So essentially what we're doing is that we implement the social informatics kernel. We actually push into the kernel. In other words, that we will be able to label that with a lot of information. We can actually label an email content, but we can actually also label with a file. For example, I want to say, how am I related to this particular file? Let me give you an example. If you actually use a web download to download from some public website, that's a file. That's just you and the file. But say 4 of us actually discussed for the ecs251 midterm, we're looking at a PowerPoint file, or look at a document we actually edit, a Google share document. And the thing is that what's happening is that the social informatics about these 4 people who involved will actually be very useful. Because, by the way, your machine or your cloud space have lots of files. In my case, I probably have about 20 million files right now. with all kind of stuff. And to be honest, right now it's really hard for me to find some of the old files. I only keep certain file, which because it's teaching, I'll be able to find it. But any file that's a little bit older, my old research, my old program, wow, good luck. But if you actually keep the social informatics, the things will be very, you have a different option. For example, today is 2022, February 22, right? Oh, that's interesting. We have a lot of 2. So today is February 22, 2022. Okay, so we're in this room and we're going over a PowerPoint file or YouTube presentation, and we're all here. So if this information is shareable, everybody agree, we actually will be able to connect our social relationship with this file we're dealing with. What does that mean? It means that 10 years after today, or even 20 years after today, you actually suddenly realize there was an interesting comment by one of the students in the class. I really want to retrieve, but you don't know what it is. So instead of trying to find a lecture, trying to look for the whole thing, you actually want to just directly mention your relationship with that student or your relationship with some of the people here, and then provide whatever content. And this kind of information will help you quickly try to find out what are the files that might fit into that. So if you think about why today's file system is kind of hard. Let me actually tell you today, there's a few options about search. Because what I described is a search operation. I want to search something. So you have to essentially search by name, or search by timestamp, or search by type of the file. That's essentially all the option we have on internet. Facebook actually provides another kind of search, but that search is actually being limited to Facebook application, not my application. So this is my look at this example. Keyword I will forget. Okay, I mean I have to remember what keyword, so that's fine. So what Facebook did is today they will actually allow you to search something prioritize to your friends. If your friends are interested in certain content, that you actually be able to receive those content as higher priority. But those are usually done for today's content, or right now, for video that one of us just shared like 2 minutes ago. By the way, Facebook only keep this content for about less than 2 minutes, about 90 seconds. So if somebody share a content within like 30 seconds, if actually nobody actually click a like, nobody actually make a comment, this content essentially will be put into the refrigerator. Because they will think that nobody is interested in this, for whatever reason, they're not going to put this as a high priority. So it's a loss, essentially. So that social content is really small. But the thing is that social context information is there in their database. It's just they decide they want to only use it for 30 seconds. So that's why I'm saying that if a company like a social media, they manage the social relationship, if they can actually make it let us to program, let us to do that, that's a huge difference. That's actually, I'm thinking, is a concept. In fact, it's interesting that many students listen to this lecture when I describe that. They work for Facebook now. And still, Facebook hasn't changed. So I'm saying that, okay, I educate all the students, you go to a company, maybe you can help. All right, so it didn't happen. But anyway, that's okay. They're worried about something else. They're worried about things. Every time I talk to my student work for Facebook, they worry about, oh, how do I do advertisement? How do I do micro advertisement? I say, okay, great. You're good at doing those. Okay, fine. All right, so let me actually give you another example. So the social resources is interesting. It helps us to deal with a problem such as be able to differentiate a important matter versus less important matter. It also actually allows us to actually be able to search something which is closer to the human nature instead of just push us to remember name or the type of file. Okay, so I'm actually going to give you another very interesting example. So how many of you are working on networking research? Network? We don't have any people. So basically right now, everybody come in here to UC Davis if you want to study machine learning and data mining or something like that. Yeah, that's probably 80% of the applicant anyway. So have you heard about VPN, virtual private network? Okay, we're going to see a case of virtual private social network, VPSN. All right, it's a similar concept. So that's why I'm asking whether any of you is working on VPN networking. Then I'm going to tell you what is the difference between virtual private network and virtual private social network. Why is that? I'm using this just as an example, but this you can apply to any game that's actually has some Facebook portal over there. So this game it used to be really, really popular. It's called Farmville. Anybody play Farmville before? Okay, some of you actually play Farmville before. So Farmville, that there was a one feature in Farmville. But by the way, at that time, Farmville, is that true that Farmville, you have to have a Facebook account? Okay, you have to have a Facebook at that time. Yeah, I don't know whether Farmville exists. By the way, Farmville, it's a Farmville by the company Zynga. Is that right? There is a company called Zynga, no longer exists. The label is actually a dog. So the key graduate student, the social network Kernel, he joined Zynga. So that's another thing. I expect the industry will do something, didn't happen, okay? Every time I look at the game, I say, okay, I send Thomas Trent to Zynga, and then Thomas, I don't know where he is now. All right, so this is the ideas. It's called Farmville. So Farmville is essentially a game that you actually try to grow your. I haven't played this game for so long, so I cannot remember the detail. But basically, you have some kind of farmland and some kind of animal and things like that. But there's an important feature about this game is that in order for you to upgrade to the next level, you have to have enough neighbors. Okay, number one, if you want to upgrade this game, you have to have enough neighbors. And the thing is that this game actually have another feature saying that if you want to become neighbor with another person, you have to be their Facebook friend. Okay, so essentially we're saying that you have a two network. One is being created or managed at an application called Farmville, and another network by Facebook. And they have to be one-to-one correspondence to each other. So essentially, okay, I just want to make sure you understand. If you want to upgrade, you have to have a neighbor, have enough neighbor. And that any neighbor you have, they have to be your Facebook friend. Okay, and by the way, they do even more. They say, well, anytime you get a chicken or something, then all your friends will get a notification. I'll get to that part a little bit later. But do you think this is a good strategy? It is a good strategy because essentially it's actually creating a win-win situation. Number one, that Farmville like to match with a Facebook friend, so Farmville want you to actually bring your friend into this game, right? And that's why they want to decide. They want your friend to actually bring into the game. So the game, actually Farmville at that time has a few million. So it's actually grown very nicely with that. All right, so this is also good for Facebook because Facebook will think, okay, what happened? You only have a 150 friend. I mean, some of us has a 5,000 friend, but most people has supposed to have a less number of friends. Okay, I don't know how many friends you have. There is a number called Dunbar number. Dunbar number is how many meaningful friends you should have. Is at 150. Okay, so essentially Facebook want to grow as well. They realize that, okay, this mechanism help them because if you want to upgrade your level, you need, I remember one level, I need 50 friends, 50 neighbors. So I don't have that many. What do? I actually encourage some of the people who has not been using Facebook. I ask them to join Facebook. And then when join Facebook, they actually join the game, and then we can play together. So they're actually thinking both between Zynga and the Facebook are thinking about win-win situation, and such that you will be able to grow the ecological system between both the social network and the game itself. Okay. Okay, any question so far? So let me ask you, do you think this is a good approach? Let me ask you, do you think this is a good approach between a social network game like Farmfield, whatever Zynga is doing, versus what Facebook was doing? By the way, this was Facebook's strategy back then, in maybe 2010, around 2010. This actually created a lot of problems. Let me just tell you that. It looks like it will work that way, but actually it doesn't work that way. Okay, number one I want to tell you is that because of this, you actually at that time, I think even today, you can actually find this website. This website is called Add Me Please. The website is called Add Me Please. There is a website, some of them even under Facebook. What do I mean by Add Me Please? Because those are all player of Farmfield or player of any game. I want to upgrade my level. I need more than a neighbor. I don't have enough friends. It's really hard to actually convince a real friend to join Facebook, then join the game. But it's much easier to convert those people who want to upgrade just like you to actually become your friend, right? So that's actually become a really obvious outcome of this strategy. So essentially, we actually see the friendship on the Facebook plan grow very fast. They grow very fast because the relationship, in fact, let me tell you that what kind of relationship is. The relationship is purely based on your interaction in the game. There are two people become friends, they never know each other, but they want to do this. So let me actually tell you what I did that time, a Saturday. A computer science professor usually a very boring person, so I don't have any social life. So I actually go to Facebook and go to this site. I create a fake account, of course. And then I go to this website to actually click Add Me Please. To just ask people, I mean, just one afternoon, I got 350 friends. This is 2009. 2009, 350 friends is considered pretty good. All right, so you can see that it's fairly easy. People over there, as long as you want to add them as a friend, they will say yes. So essentially, our social network become a network that's actually controlled by one particular application. So that is actually very sad, because if I actually don't see the social resources as a valuable stuff to control, then essentially one application is going to drive and dominate, and such that the value of the whole social network become reduced. Let me give you a quantitative example. I actually didn't include it in the slide. At that time, we actually found 10% of the game user, 10% of the game user, 95% of their friendship are actually only about that particular game. If you go to essentially a huge percentage. I mean, it doesn't say the rest are very nice. The rest is just less than 90%. But it's actually basically their social network. If I'm not going to use social network to communicate. Oh, by the way, this is my favorite story. If I want to actually be able to send an email, spammer, after I have sold email, the number one nightmare I have is that people will, the spammer will play or use a bot to play farm field and build that social network. So they can actually generate social email based on that relationship. You think about that, it's all ecological system, one push to the other. And therefore, we're arguing by having the careless manage of the social relationship mapping between the farm field and Facebook, it's actually going to diminishing the value. So I actually said that even in 2009. I think that, well, I actually have that in my in one of my slides. You can see that this is actually my fake account. I like Rabbit, so at that time this was my Rabbit or Cinnabon. I actually do whatever, and all the people. At that time I only have a 541 friend. I know none of them. Okay, it's all about farm field, and everything that's actually published on my wall is about farm field. Okay, all right. So that's actually what's happening. Let me actually say something. Okay, so sorry, I want to add it over here. Yeah. Okay, so essentially, what we want to prevent is that we think that we just allow people to add this add a lot of this kind of what I call not inflate, but really weak relationship into this graph. And also, we actually think that some of the vacation, because their design is actually pushing the landscape change about the true application of that friendship graph. Okay, that's what I was saying. Okay, so I want to actually say, let me see. There's another bad thing about this. I'm going to use this one. Okay, fine. I'm going to just use this slide to talk about this. So the design we actually have. So that's why we actually start to build kernel. So say, okay, if the Facebook does not handle this, then we have to build an operating system to actually control that. So now I'm going to talk about the paper that's actually causing my application being shut down. I'm going to tell you that what that application is doing. So what we're challenging, I said, well, should I allow an application to impose a requirement of saying that a relationship in the application layer must map to a real relationship in my social resource? Okay, so that is the question. And the thing is that I'm thinking that it's not just not necessary, but also undesirable. Not necessary because all the bad thing I just mentioned, but why it says undesirable? The undesirable is the following. Because you let the application to know that you are, number one, the application know you're playing this game. Number two, the application will know who are your friends. Okay, assuming you have two friends. One is the friend that is actually you play on the game. That's fine. When the application decides to push whatever the notification about you win the prize in this game, that's fine. They can see this. But what happened if the other friend who is actually expect you to work really hard, your boss, and maybe you're actually during office hour, I don't know, you won't, I know you won't do that. Okay, just assuming there's a person who actually just addicted to this game. He has to play during normal office hour. And he actually played that game. And guess what? It's actually very embarrassing when his boss actually receive a notification, because the application is actually find your relationship and then push it to somebody else live feed. That's called live feed. That's another issue which I don't want to talk about. Everybody has a live feed, and Facebook decides what kind of live feed you want to put in. If that person is your friend, you have to share a good price. Facebook actually wants to put that in your boss live feed. Guess what? Facebook doesn't know he's your boss. Number one, okay? And number two, Facebook wants that person to be able to play Farmville as well. Okay, so guess you either get your boss play Farmville or you got fired. Let's actually calculate the probability, which one is actually more likely. Okay, so that's why we argue that that relationship shouldn't be pop up to that, right? So how do I actually be able to protect that? Okay, so this is actually today's, this picture was drawn 12 years ago, but still true. Okay, so essentially what all this app, including Farmville, including So Email, including So Wikipedia, and whatever application, we developed a suite of application that they actually, for any user uses application, you can actually go through Facebook API to retrieve the user's information, particularly about the friendship, all the friends that you have, okay? That's API, I think even today, you can have that. And then user is from this side and try to access to that. So what we actually want to do is this. Hold on. We actually insert another layer between the Facebook and the application. So we call it, at that time, we call it FACE. So FACE stands for Facebook Application Identifier Translation and Hypervisor. So we actually insert so what is a FACE? FACE is actually a new application, a new Facebook application, which is actually providing on this side, it provides exactly the same API as this one provides. So we basically replicate every single API that Facebook provides. And so the thing is that whenever the application, so they are not going to register with Facebook. If they want to be FACE compliance, they need to register with FACE. We were exactly matched. Guess what? That's why Facebook shut it down, okay? And then we have to explain this. There's only 5 applications that's actually registered with FACE. And all 5 applications we develop ourselves. So they actually understand. It's not a big threat or something. It's an academic publication. So essentially, we actually let application connect to FACE. And every request API, most of them, we actually just relate to the Facebook. We actually figure out how to do the token at that time, the authentication. So we will be able to play man in the middle attack that we can actually do that. We can essentially we intersect everything over there. And the thing is that I said VPN, like a network address translation, we're actually doing that over here. So let me actually tell you what we did in a very high level. So what we did is that you have this relationship about the player, whether they're a neighbor, and they actually request, I have to know your friendship. So this is actually what we do, is we transform the relationship. So from Facebook to us, it's actually this relationship. Eric is a friend of Justin. Justin is a friend of Felix. That's the Facebook relationship. But the thing is that we actually think that that can be virtualized. So I can have a two-way to virtualize. So essentially, I can create, for Farmville perspective, I actually bypass Justin to say, okay, the true network that you should care about in this particular application is just between Eric and Felix. So I can actually manage so our protocol in FACE, I can actually make a system call to make FACE to actually change that. So this application, when they actually try to access the social informatics, they actually will see only this part. Okay, that's one type of transformation. We have two types of transformation. One is actually, we call it remove the relationship. One is called virtual, means that you actually use a pass replace with one virtual friendship, or just like a vNode kind of situation. But here we actually also do this. You can actually block. This is actually, at that time, we feel very important feature is that, for example, Justin, he's the one who actually want to play farm field. And Felix happened to be his ecs251 professor. Guess what? All the students keep telling me, hey, I'm so busy and I need an extension for this homework assignment. You can imagine that. But he is actually will be really disappointed if he realized that I actually know him playing certain game because I'm his Facebook friend. Okay, so essentially he can say in that kernel, in the face kernel, if you look at the topology, that over here, I'm going to do transformation. I'm going to make certain relationship hidden. That's actually have a overlay network, or I actually can just remove certain relationship. So the farm field doesn't even know that that person is my friend or your friend in the context of that application. So that's what the idea about. You can see that is to me is just another layer of application, almost like a proxy. We allow people to be able to do that. But it actually provides interesting way for any user. So who actually can control this? You can control this. When you participate in the application, application will try to get all of your information, but we actually want to be able to control this box in such that you will be able to transform your relationship only for that particular. Okay, that is just a motivation for us to how do you manage the social network information. Okay. 1 second. Okay, I have about 10 minutes. Let me actually go through this very quickly to tell you, I think I covered this already. Okay, I think it's fine. This part is just a detail about what we implement about virtual private network. Yeah, so the idea is we want to just let the user be able to define and control their social needs and social resources. And we use the concept of virtual private social network for you to actually be able to handle that for both email application. And so this is essentially an architecture at that time for our implementation that we have. So in the button layer is actually your social network over in Facebook. So this part is actually on Facebook. And then what we did is that our part, which is the social center operating system kernel, is actually talking to the Facebook server using the Facebook API, which is no longer available, by the way. And then we actually provide two different layers. There one kind of application, which is actually be able to using social network directly by a system call. So the thing is that we just basically provide a social context and for them to directly call us. That's fine. But we also see there are some existing applications who want to use this, but they actually don't because they're already implemented. They cannot do anything. So they have to use something we call the wrapper, and such that we actually help them to be able to manage certain perspective of their application, such as farm field. Because the farm field doesn't make any call. We just help them to actually wrap around and such that they will be able to get the right amount of social informatics. And then we're really trying to just protect whatever is here and try to provide that. Okay. I think that's pretty much everything I should talk about. The pieces that I haven't talked about is how do I calculate trust? I will not go into detail because trust is really about network theory, about how do you actually calculate a graph, how do you actually worry about that when people try to attack the trust network. I mean, any kind of trust network, the number one issue, especially for online, is that people is going to create a huge number of fake accounts, and they will perform something we call Sybil attack, which they actually create fake social network and then integrate with real network. And it looks like you have a community that's actually very trustworthy, but it's actually just controlled and managed by a big company who actually has a lot of cloud power to do that. Okay, so it's an important issue, but it's actually going to a totally different spectrum. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop here. Any question? Any question from remote? Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Yeah. Right. Okay, please. Okay.